Hello, everybody, and welcome. We're just allowing everybody to come into class. Let's give them a couple of minutes to get into class. While we're waiting for folks to join us, we love hearing where you guys are calling in from, and you're joining us in our virtual class. So please put that in the chat below. Just let us know what city, state, country may be coming in, and we will get started here shortly. Hello, welcome everybody. We're going to give people a couple more minutes to join us in the class. We've got a few people still in the waiting room. We're trying to get everyone connected. If for whatever reason you get disconnected from the class or anything, just as a reminder, this class is going to be recorded and we will post it on our virtual grimoire. So there'll be a chance for you to catch up if you get disconnected or you miss part of the class. Well, welcome, welcome. And if you're just now joining us, when we like to start these classes, we would love to hear where everyone is from. And so if you want to put that in the chat, that lets us know where everyone is coming in from. Okay. And I will continue to try to let folks in as they come into the waiting room. I'll keep an eye on that. Okay. We've got a lot of ground that we're going to cover. So we're going to go ahead and get started with class. There's a lot of content with this class. Like I said, there's going to be a playback option. We have what's called a virtual grimoire. It's on Clastra's platform. So it's hws.clastra.org. We'll make sure that the link gets in the chat so that you can copy that and save it for a little bit later. We'll also post about it on our social media in connection to into the class, so that if you, like I said, get disconnected for whatever reason, we will definitely post the replay and any accompanying documents. Right now, I don't have a handout for the class. I will be trying to work on recovering that document. Mercury retrograde totally took my file this week. So I will try to get that reproduced for everyone so that you have some additional information that will go with these slides and with this content. But you'll have access to the playback, you'll have access to the slides, and then hopefully like a reference document that you can use and look back on. So if you're joining us for the first time and you've never been in the store, you've never had a chance to meet me, my name is Myra. I am the owner of Hearth Wisdom Store. I am an eclectic gray witch. I'm an unaffiliated high priestess, which means that I don't associate with any particular tradition or coven or sect. I've been practicing witchcraft for almost 20 years. My birthday's coming up, so I won't date myself with that. Candle magic was one of the first magical practices that I started working with when I began my spiritual path. It's one of the things I love working with and I love teaching. If you missed our candle basics class, it is available on our virtual grimoire as well. It is free to the public, so you can go back and reference that. We cover things like types of candles, color associations, timing of candles, when you should work with certain kind of energies, whether it's days or moon cycles or whatnot. But that is a standalone class. I do think that that is a class that you do not necessarily have to have in advance of this class. It's helpful, and I would recommend going back and referencing that class, but you don't necessarily have to have that type of information under your belt already. So this class with advanced magic, we're going to talk about some advanced techniques and tools to use. And then we're also going to spend a lot of time on interpretations, because I think one of the biggest aspects about candle magic is the interaction that you have with the candle itself as it's working and propagating. I want to stress that candle magic by itself is not, it's not an effective way of manifesting what you want simply by itself. It is really a function of intent and the power of the practitioner of who is using candle magic, because it is an extension of you. It's an extension of your intention and the energy that you're putting out there and what you are asking for, petitioning for, or working with. And so when we talk about advanced candle magic aspects, it's really becoming a proficient practitioner of using candles in your practice in order to work with the energy and the magic that you already have within yourself. If you think that just lighting a candle is going to get you the end result, that's not how any of this works. And so you may be very frustrated if you've been lighting a bunch of candles and not getting that. Hopefully from this last class and this class, you will be able to perhaps enhance or modify your techniques in order to have better results when it comes to candle magic. Okay, so I think I've let everybody in the waiting room in. Once again, my name is Myra. I'm the owner of Hearth Wisdom Store, and let's go ahead and get started in our class content. Okay, so we do have an agenda today. We've got, like I said, we have a lot of content to go through. This class was one that was highly requested. We've had the basic class already. This is the advanced class. I am considering putting together what I would call a mastery class, maybe later this summer, where we would actually spend time crafting candles. I would teach you some of my personal techniques or learned techniques over the years, get into my own grimoire and show you those things. We would be working with candles during that time. And so in preparation of that, if you've got a topic or a question, go ahead and put it in the chat. We are going to try to consolidate all of those. So if I don't answer that question during this class, it's something that we can put into the mastery class and make sure that we're addressing and giving you all the resources that you want. But our agenda for today, we're going to talk a little bit, revisit the idea of what candle magic is real briefly. Like I said, we covered a lot in our basic class. A little reminder on safety. I'll talk a little bit about some advanced tools and techniques, and you'll have to be patient with me as I flip camera and show you some of the tools that I have here with me, so that way you can see them, so they're not in this little tiny window in the corner. We'll also talk about some magic tips, and we'll go through all of the different ways of reading candle magic, whether reading the flame, reading the wax, reading the smoke, and what those meanings may be, and then debunking some myths and answering some questions before the end. So hopefully we can cover all of that within the time allowed. Like I said, if there are certain questions that you have that you want to, hopefully I will answer those in the natural course of this class today. But if I don't, I will definitely make sure I include them when we do our mastery class. Excellent. Okay. So I've touched on this during our basic class. You know, what is candle magic really connecting us with? Fire, if you think back into the history of mankind, fire, I believe, and a lot of people believe this, was the first discovery of magic by humans. You know, it was the first time I think that we connected with elemental energy. You know, we realized that fire had both formative energy to it, it had a destructive energy to it, it had a life-giving energy to it, and creating fire was one of the, I guess, original primal forms of magic for humans. And so working with candle magic taps into that initial primal self and that connection with the elemental of fire. And so candle magic is really about feeding in our intention, using candles as an extension of our intention, creating beacons to alert the universe, ancestors, guides, you know, the divine energy source to what it is that we are asking for, what we're asking assistance for. So working with that element of fire as a way of transforming our intention into action is why candle magic is one of the earliest forms, or it's a representation, it's representative magic of our ancestral primal source of internal magic as humans. Now, anytime we're going to talk about candles or fire for that matter, we do have to talk about some basic safety concepts. I know a lot of this seems like very, like basic information, common sense type things, but whether you're a new practitioner or a seasoned practitioner, sometimes we need reminding of there's just some basic setups with candle magic. And I shared this during the basic class. I mean, even me as a seasoned practitioner who does a lot of candle magic, recently, a couple months ago, my cat jumped up into the space where I was working at. I wasn't paying attention to where he was at and walked right across one of the flames, caught the side of his fur on fire. He's okay. I'm an animal activist and an animal lover. I didn't even notice it was there, and I was able to kind of like pat him out. But so just be mindful of your surroundings when you're working with candle magic, especially open flame type candle magic. We don't, you know, I recommend that if you can stay with a candle, please do. But if you can't, I understand that that's sometimes, you know, a choice. But if you're going to leave a candle, make sure that you're taking safety precautions and putting it somewhere where it will be well ventilated, not drafty, because if you're going to read it, then you don't want it to be drafty. But you also want to make sure that you are practicing safe fire, you know, magic around pets, kids, your house, curtains, all that stuff. And so the last thing you want is the devastating outcome of bad common sense and burning something or catching something on fire that you didn't want to catch on fire. So we're going to talk about a couple of advanced techniques and tools. Like I said, in the basic class, we covered, I feel like that class was more about like, okay, you're about to do a candle magic spell. Here's some basic information about color and type of candle, timing of candle, like when to burn it, how to burn it, and all those things. Advanced techniques is going to cover some of the advanced tools that you might use. So if you've done some candle magic and maybe you didn't get the full result that you wanted to, these are some things that you could do or utilize to kind of amp up your candle magic, or hopefully try out different techniques. You know, you can get different results by doing different, I guess, different layers of your candle magic. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about a couple of different advanced tools or advanced techniques and show you a couple of examples of those as well, in order to help encourage you, help inspire you when it comes to candle magic. So this is the list of things that we're going to actually kind of cover. Under one of my favorite ones to use are sigils and runes or vivets. You know, so these are, I call them, they're there to help, to augment the work that you're doing. And this could be a sigil that is one that you create. So you, if we should do a sigil class, you know, like how to create your own sigil, or maybe it's a sigil that you are connected to. Maybe it has angelic references, maybe it has deity references, protective, maybe it's as astrological in nature. So there are different sigils that you're having that you want to give back to the universe, as far as like this is to clarify or to enhance and augment it. You can use sigils, runes, or vivets on the candle itself by carving the candle. You could put a piece of paper underneath it. The one on the left here, I've got a crafter in our local community who is going to make candle coasters, I guess is the best way I could describe it, where they have wood burned sigils on top of them. So if you're somebody who uses a particular repeatedly, this might be a nice altar tool to have and set your candle on top of it, you know, to continuously work with that same energy. And so different types of sigils, runes, vivets have different types of meanings behind them. And it's a language that the universe understands. It's a language that the universe can connect to help bring in the magic that you're looking for, or to attract the intention that you're looking for. So this can be drawn on the side of a candle. Like I said, it could be carved on the side of a candle. It could be printed. It could be somewhere around there. You could burn the sigil or the rune or the vivet, depending upon what it is you're trying to do, using the fire from the candles. So there's a couple of different ways that you can integrate this technique when you're doing candle magic. Oop, sorry, glanced ahead. I mentioned carving. Carving is another great tool, and it comes in a couple of different formats. I do have a carving tool set here. I'm going to show you an example of a carving tool set a little bit later when I switch over to the tabletop to show you a couple of ideas or concepts. Some of the best candles to carve on are the ones that are larger. They're the large pillar candles, pull-out candles or whatnot, where you can carve a person's name, a person's date of birth, the intention that you want to have, you know, maybe a very specific request. Maybe you're looking for a specific dollar amount. You know, maybe you have, like I said, you have a target in mind or a person in mind that you're working with this. Maybe it is one of those runes or those sigils that you have there. So there's the carving technique on the candle itself in order to enhance and to augment your magic or your intention. The other reason why you might want to incorporate carving is if you've ever seen the reversing candles in the store. They are ones that are usually two-toned, like maybe it's black and red or black and green. A reversing candle can literally be burned at both ends if you carve the other end of the candle. And so you expose the wick on the bottom end of the candle. You can balance it on a like a nail or a pin. There are certain, you know, like a stick that you can actually put the candle on there carefully so you don't split it. And you can burn a candle both ends by carving the other end of that candle. And so practicing with different carving techniques is not just for creating symbols or writing on the candle itself. You know, you may actually want to transform the candle into a more specific intention that you have by changing or altering the candle through carving. And so you could maybe draw not just a symbol, but you make something out of a basic candle by carving it out. If you've ever seen those really elaborate, I think they're like Holland candles where they're super elaborate, different colors and everything like that. Even something like that could really add or enhance to your intention or what you're trying to communicate with your candle magic. Candle layouts is one of my favorite tools as an advanced technique. And this is a lot like using candles in the form of a grid. And if we have time at the end of the class, I'm actually going to do one live for you for a very specific intention that we have for the store with a project that we're working on. But this is where you can start to incorporate different types of candles, you know, layering in intention, creating a grid on a surface where you can use herbs, you can use images, tarot cards, you know, in this case, there's a couple of examples here of candle layouts. So the shape that you create, maybe it's a triangle, maybe it's a cross, maybe it is a crown. And then you can connect those candles through herb connections or crystal connections, you know, or drawing out a symbol on a surface and putting candles at different points. So there is you can enhance kind of like your candle magic practices by using something like a layout or like a grid, you know, to put intention into the work. One of the reasons why I really like this is that sometimes we're trying to combine different kinds of energies together for the same purpose. Like, for example, the one that I hope to do for you guys today live has a little bit of road opener, because we want to open some doorways to some opportunities that will then lead to a very specific monetary request. You know, so I can include things like road opener oil and prosperity oil. I can use a figure candle in the center that is representative of you know, the store or something like that. The other thing too is it makes for a very interesting like when you're reading the wax and everything like that. So if you really start to love reading wax or reading a candle's burn, it can give you more, I think, feedback, more information as they all kind of meld together. So candle layouts is another great technique, and there are lots of examples out there that you could search for inspiration. But more importantly, I would encourage you to use your intuition, use your own creativity, your own instinct about how to lay it out, and you know, experiment with what works. Another great tool to use with candles are mirrors. Again, this is another favorite of mine. And I use mirrors in two different ways when it comes to candle magic. One, if you're trying to do something that's return to sender or bounce it back, so maybe you're feeling some negativity at you, or maybe you are trying to send something away. You can use mirrors underneath candles to do that reflective work or to bounce something back. You can also use mirrors as a form of uncovering truths. So for example, I've done both of these types of examples with the bounce back or return to sender, but I've also done it in a form of not quite divination, more for uncovering what's hidden, using, say, a scrying mirror or a regular mirror in order to reflect off of the candle when you're trying to illuminate what's hidden. That mirror surface can then be the portal that you're asking for information to be revealed. So for example, let's say somebody is being deceptive, or maybe they've got a glamour going in terms of they don't want you to see the truth, they don't want you to see their truth. You can use a mirror to help see through that, to get clarity through that. Maybe you're also trying to work and connect with spirit or connect with ancestors. This is a beacon, to attract towards you for that meditation. So mirrors are another great tool that you can incorporate with candle magic to enhance whatever your intention is or whatever it is that you're trying to achieve. This is another fun one too. There's an aspect of candle magic that is also poppet magic, or talismans and amulets. And these are a couple of examples of different types of poppets and talismans and amulets that you could make using wax from candles. So I think we tend to think of candle magic as simply just burning a candle, but not. There's more that you could do with that. And so one of them is creating a poppet. So the one on the left is specifically designed as a love poppet, where you take the wax and basically you're pouring the wax into like a mold. So as it's burning down in your intention, you're basically transferring the energy from the candle into a mold to create this. Gingerbread molds are great for this, so they make great poppets. You could create anything. You could use a heart, so if you ever get like those silicone, what are they, muffin pans or ice cube trays, if you see those that go on clearance, I love those. You can also get, I love the ones that are skulls around Halloween time, because then you can create a skull poppet, which is great about, being on somebody's mind or getting somebody out of your mind or whatnot. And you can create a poppet that you can use in additional magic or additional practices. And so that allows you then to have follow-on magic. Another one is our talismans. And so these other two examples are talismans that are created that you carry on you for things like opening up your third eye or your intuition or connecting with deity, or perhaps a love talisman. So you basically pour the wax out into, I've seen them done in bottle caps or little tins, so if you've got any small little containers that you can then keep with you and work with it on an ongoing basis. Protection talismans, that are made out of wax. And so that's another great way of using your candle magic in an enhanced way, beyond just burning the candle itself. Nails and pins. I personally love nails and pins and candles. So on the left, before clocks were invented, candles were a way of measuring time. And so this is an example of how the candle was partitioned out for time. And so they would put pins in the candles, and as it burnt down, that was an indicator of time. Now, it's not always accurate, because depending upon the type of wax, a type of where it's burning at or anything like that, it may not be an accurate timekeeper. But the idea of putting pins in there, you've seen this with 7-day candles. Like if you wanted to burn it just for a set period of time, then you could put a pin in there as a marker for this is day 1, this is day 2, this is day 3, etc. Another use of pins is pinning to the candle your intention. So whether you are pinning, in this case in the center, elements of your intention, You know, so in this case, the skull has pinned in at very specific points. So the idea of pinning to somebody's mouth in order to speak love, or perhaps to see love, like intentionally see love, or to think love. You could use pins as a way of focusing exactly what you want. Like, this is great for shut up type, you know, candle magic, you know, stop gossip. Maybe that's probably a better way of saying that. Stop gossip. You know, you could basically put a pin in a skull candle to pin their mouth closed, you know, to stop them from gossiping, dress it with stop gossip oil and whatnot. Here's another great example of where candle magic is done, not just in pagan practices or witchcraft practices. This is a Christian candle. These are usually done every year. They are symbolic of the sacrifice of Christ, you know, so there's 4 pins that have been placed on here decoratively with the Alpha and Omega. They dress these candles every year in churches, you know, and have it dedicated to the church for the whole year and burn it down for special occasions. So it doesn't really matter what your spiritual path is. Candle magic's been around for a long time. No matter how you look at it, there are different ways of approaching it and different intentions. So I would say the candle on the right is been dressed or has been fixed with the intention of Christ or Jesus or whatever, you know, the idea of using intentional magic throughout the workings that you have and how you dress that candle. Okay, we're going to talk about a little bit something that's a little bit controversial: glitter. So glitter, regardless of how you feel about glitter, I do understand that there are environmental reasons to avoid glitter. There are also burning reasons to avoid glitter. But you can use glitter in your candle magic as a way of popping a sigil or something off of the candle. You know, I've seen gold glitter added to candles for prosperity. I've seen them, you know, dressed for emphasis, for deity, for, I mean, I can imagine Venus candles that are very pretty and very shiny, you know. And there are glitters out there that are completely okay to use. So somebody mentioned in the chat, eco glitters or food-based glitter. Tara, I think there, what is it called? Is it like is it mica that you put it, like you can put in soaps and whatnot? Yeah, there's biodegradable type glitters out there that you can use, food grade type glitters that I think would be perhaps better to use when you're dressing a candle. Particularly anything you add to a candle is going to affect your interpretation of it, you know, so, but it is a technique. There is Lady Rhea, who owns the Enchantments out in New York. She is famous for these dressed candles that are very elaborately carved and dressed and fixed with glitter. And she's written a beautiful book about it. And so I personally don't work with glitter in my candles just because I tend to wear a lot of black and I hate it that it gets everywhere. But I've seen some beautifully dressed candles using glitter as a way of enhancing your intention. Charms, crystals, and such. This is another area of how you can advance the technique of your candle magic is by adding things to and around it. This is not necessarily has to be directly in the candle, but using all of these can be used around your candle as well. So you don't necessarily have to put the glitter on the candle. You don't necessarily have to, you know, a lot of this can be in the vicinity of the candle that you're working on. So charms, symbols, anything that can help you to focus on what it is that you're trying to work with. Crystals around it are also great ways of enhancing a candle. The other thing that I like about that too is that it can be very discreet, you know, so there's ways that you can very subtly dress a candle without it being overtly obvious to somebody else, you know. So for example, let's say you are dressing a candle that you want to give to somebody. Let's say you have somebody that you are wanting to attract, whatever reason, like maybe it's love, maybe it's you want to attract favor. You could like dress a really nice candle like the ones like maybe on the right, make it very decorative in nature and give it to them to burn. So it allows you then to kind of transfer the energy or transfer the intention, you know, to that person, and put it into their possession. And so you can create very beautiful intentional candles using charms and crystals and such. Okay, word of caution on all of this. Enough. And I'm not trying to call out anybody with any of these pictures, okay? But as a practitioner, if your intention is to work with candles in a way that you want to evaluate or to read or perhaps interact with that candle and to assess it for the quality of your magic or how a spell is progressing, then first and foremost, you do not want to overdress your candle. These are all examples of what I would consider an overdressed candle. They are very beautiful. They are very aesthetically pleasing. I actually like some candles that are like this, but I tend to use candles that are dressed this way in a more appreciative way, not necessarily in a very intentional, magical way. So you know, if it's possible that you can remove the items, you know, so we have some candle makers here in our community that make some of the candles that kind of look like this, but not exactly. One of the things I ask for them is to make their accoutrements, you know, the add-ins, removable or detachable so that you can create like a candle layout if you wanted to. And the reason why this is really important is that if you are going to be interpreting your magic or interpreting your the outcome of your spell with candle magic, you know, reading the smoke, reading the wax and whatever, these candles are going to deeply impact all of that. And I don't know that you would get a fair assessment out of that candle because these are overdressed. This is what I would call an overdressed candle. Very aesthetically pleasing. Like I said, and somebody mentioned in the comments that these can become a massive fire hazard. And so if you're going to work with candles that are like this, please stay with it. You know, they can burn surfaces, they can catch things on fire, you know, make sure that you're using something to contain it properly. So like for the one on the left here, it's like a votive candle. It looks like it's completely coated. I would put this in a bowl, you know, something that would be pretty fire resistant because I would expect this thing to just be a blazing torch, you know. So, but I do like the ones where you can pull those items out and you almost can create kind of like a candle setting, you know, with the pieces that were added to it. So it just wanted to keep that in mind as a tip is that when you're working with candles, you don't need a lot of the elements and just be mindful of how you're dressing it. Okay. So a couple other tips when it comes to candle magic. I have a couple of things I want to encourage for some folks is that I keep what I call a candle magic journal. I started doing this when I first started doing candle magic, mostly just because I was learning. You know, I was new to it. I was learning. I didn't know what to expect or how to possibly keep track of the outcome. And so in a candle magic journal, I recommend that you put the date that you crafted the candle. If it was intentional, like a zodiac sign or an astrological date or a particular date, record all of that. You know, if you made a Mercury retrograde candle, make sure that you state that I did this on whatever Tuesday of, you know, January for Mercury retrograde. Record the dates it burned. You're going to find that some candles that are like 7-day, 4-day candles, they don't always burn in 7 days or 4 days. A lot of that some of that has to do with mundane reasons. Some of that has to do with magical reasons. But the more that you kind of work with candles and record this, you can kind of go back and start seeing, how do I interact with my candle magic? How do I interact with the magic of fire? You know, what is the language that I'm developing with spirit, with universe, and with divine? And you'll start to see patterns. You'll start to see information that's being repeated to you. So I also recommend that you are recording the materials that you use. So did you use a sigil? Did you use a crystal? Did you use a what kind of herbs did you use? What kind of oils did you use? Okay, is my sound okay? Let me see if I can adjust my mic here. I'm getting some people that are saying sound is cutting in and out. I took
Now,
the
I
receiver.
have to agree, Myra, it is cutting in and out.
Okay. Hold on one second.
Not a lot, but a little bit.
Bear with me. Okay, can you hear me now? Can you hear me? Am I coming through? I just
Yes, but you sounded like a very bad Verizon commercial.
Oh, okay. Well, if that was just my the me just being silly. So, okay. I'll try to go a little bit slower, so just in case there's a garble to it that you guys can pick up on it. The other part of a candle magic journal is journaling your observations. You know, so when you start to notice things about the flame, you notice things about the smoke, or you notice things about the behavior of the candle. Documenting that, document what time it started. You know, what I found with some of my candles, especially ones when I'm working against something or somebody. I started noticing patterns of when they were actually working against it. You know, so usually it was at nighttime. You know, I'd suddenly wake up in the middle of the night and the candle is, you know, mile high above the rim of the glass itself. So you start to observe observations, and then you want to also record outcomes. You know, because sometimes the magic and the intention that you're working doesn't manifest right away. You know, so you do want to keep track of, well, when did I finish that? And when did I start seeing outcomes for that, you know, and recording little parts of that. That helps you to be a better candle magic practitioner by recording that information, by keeping track of it. Candle magic tips, explore different techniques and styles. You may find that one particular technique or style doesn't work for you all the time, or you connect with it better in a different style or a different format. And so before you close yourself down to candle magic practice in your spiritual work, practice different styles and different techniques. And sometimes your outcomes will be enhanced by doing that. Plan ahead. This is a big one. Again, having a candle magic journal could help with this. So plan ahead for key dates. Plan ahead for when you want to create a candle for a specific event. Maybe it's an astrological event, maybe it's a retrograde, maybe it is a, hey, I have an interview coming up, you know, and so you want to plan ahead and make sure you have all the materials, make sure that you have everything that you want. You can even dress candles in advance as long as you store them well, you know, covering them with something to protect it. So you could have those available. And then also keep in mind that I think it's really important that we honor candle magic, not just for all the things that we're requesting. You know, so not all candle magic should just be a petition or a request or baneful or reversing or anything like that. So don't forget to also work candle magic in gratitude, work candle magic in veneration. You know, so if you've, like, I'll use a great example for like Saint Expedite. You know, we tend to ask a lot of Saint Expedite and then not provide enough gratitude back. You know, so I would encourage people, you know, so if you're working with a particular deity or you're working with an ancestor or a particular entity, sometimes you might just want to burn a candle in veneration and gratitude to them. You know, that doesn't come with any strings attached. You know, you never want to be that person who's always like, hey, hitting you up, you know, what you got for me? So that would be another tip as you're working with, find good balance between what you're asking for and also what you're giving back. There was one other tip that I had that didn't make the list, and I kind of thought about it on the way here. Ice. So when you are done burning a candle, particularly if you're using a plate to burn it on or something, or maybe you had some wax spillage somewhere that you didn't want it to be, ice is your friend with candle magic. If you put ice on wax, it will help you to remove it. So when you're done and you're done reading or you're done with it, ice is going to be your friend when it comes to removing wax from the surface of a plate that you want to use again. Or if you got spillage somewhere and you don't know how to get it out, use ice. So that's another, just a mundane trick there. Okay. We're going to head into all of the mancies, so all of the different ways of interpreting candle magic. Before I jump into that, do I have any questions so far of the things that I covered? Like I said, I know I'm kind of going fast and because there's a lot of content to get through here, but do you guys have any questions so far? I'm going to take a pause there and take a sip. Okay, I see a couple of nopes. Okay. All right, so let's talk about pyromancy. There's three that we're going to cover. We're going to cover three different. They're not necessarily quite divination, but they are interpretations. And so there are three different ways to interpret your candle magic, your spell, how it's progressing, outcomes, any additional information. So when you're working with candle magic, this is a collaborative relationship that you have with divine energy, spirit, universe, deity, whoever it is that you're working with as part of your magic. And so the idea of two-way communication is really important with candle magic. Your candles have a very specific language. And that language comes in the form of reading the flame. It comes in the form of reading the smoke. It comes in the form of reading the wax, and you do not necessarily have to do all three. You may just choose to, you become very proficient and very comfortable with one or two of them. So it doesn't require you to have proficiency in all of these. And it's more about how do you want to communicate? What's the best way for you to communicate with your candle and with your magic? There was a question here about opening sacred space. Whenever I'm working candle magic, I personally usually open sacred space before I start working and building and crafting my candle. And so I think that's a personal choice about how you practice. Do you have to do it every single time you light the candle? I don't necessarily believe that. There are definitely times when I've just been very quick about it, like, hey, I've got something, and lighting a candle. I think that that's more of an agreement that you have with spirit, with your deities, with your angels, with your guides, about what is required. It may also be very tradition specific. So if you follow a very specific tradition where it's more formal, it's more high magic and whatnot, where everything requires an opening and a closing, then follow your tradition, follow the rules that you have in your practice. There are a ton of resources out there. So when we post the content for the class, I will probably put like a book list because there's a ton. And so there's a lot of really great resources and tools out there to get you started with candle magic. Okay. So let's talk about different flame interpretations. Now, generally speaking, there's like a default setting that you want to have, like you want to see in your candle magic for all three of these, whether it's smoke, flame, or wax. And so we're always going to start with those. A strong, vibrant, steady flame is usually a really good sign for your candle magic. It usually means that there's a lot of energy on your side to push the outcome that you want to have. It can also indicate that it's progressing successfully, that you are winning. I use these terms winning and losing very loosely. I don't want to encourage anything that would be considered confrontational, but whatever it is that you are working with your magic, it usually means that is a positive outcome. Now, a very strong flame could also represent anger, or presence of anger, irritation with the magic. It really kind of depends upon what you set the intention of the candle. So there's times when you may want that. You may want that heat, that passion, that urgency, that frustration to be in that candle, because that's the messaging that you're trying to push. So if just take it with a grain of salt. It also means, when I say authority, that is a position of accomplishment or achieving that goal or achieving that outcome, that you have authority or command or control over that outcome. So generally speaking, you want a strong flame. Strong flame is good in most cases. Now, the height of it, if it's like I mentioned, there's been times where I've had flames well above the top of a candle. That it's good. It's usually a good reflection. However, it also is usually an indicator to me that, yeah, I might be winning this, or I might have authority on this, but this isn't intense, action or intense magic that's going on. The opposite of that is the weak flame. So if you've ever gotten a candle and it's just not necessarily progressing as well as you'd want it to go, it can usually be it's an indicator that there's blockages. Perhaps there is some cleansing that you need to do, maybe cleansing of your space, cleansing of you, cleansing of your intention. It may mean that you need to refocus. This may be Spirit's way of saying, hey, this isn't quite what you should be focusing on, and asking you to reflect on this. It could also mean that you're losing, or that the outcome may not be what you expected it to be. It may not be as fast as you want it to be. Now, if it's a weak flame, but it's continuous and it's still burning, you don't have a lot of sooting going on, it's a clean burn or whatnot, I generally would still let those go and continue to burn, because over time, somebody asked the question, how long do you read? Well, if you're working with a 7-day candle, the flame behavior potentially can change throughout that entire period of time. So you may have a candle that starts off very strong and then ends up very weak, and that may be indicative of whatever it was that you were trying to do has been discovered, has been resisted against. There's been a blockage that you've come across here. And so you may need to do some work. This is a two-way communication. It started off strong, and then we lost momentum. We lost focus. We lost energy behind it. You can attempt to refocus that energy. What I tend to do is I will meditate around the candle, possibly push some additional energy. I'll spend time with the candle, refocusing, re-energizing it. And, for me, my communication with that is when the flame returns to a large size, that is validation about putting that back in. So it's a two-way conversation here. So it may be that you're reading different flames at different times, even on the same candle. Question about what time do you trim the wick? You would definitely trim the wick before you light the candle. Now, there's times where, so I guess I should caveat all of these when we talk about any of the interpretations. You want to eliminate any mundane reasons for it. So did you not cut the wick? Did you cut the wick too low? So, and a lot of that takes practice. So if you are practicing with a candle, determining, okay, maybe I cut the wick too short. That's the reason why having those journals is so helpful, because you can start to identify for yourself where your sweet spot is with managing the candle. And you want to make sure that's not in a drafty spot. Like, is there a draft that is affecting the flame behavior? What I would recommend is you want to experiment in your space where you get consistent communication. So I have a spot in my house. It's kind of a protected, like, alcove area, not so that it's impacting the top of the candle or anything like that, but it's not subject to airflow circulation. It's in a protected space. That is a space where I burn candles, where I want to talk, or to listen or to interact with that candle, because I know that it's in a spot that is environmentally not going to be affected, for the outcome. And so I put it in the same spot every single time when I'm burning it. We have a spot in the store that's very specific like that too. There's no vents, there's no interaction. You want to make sure that you kind of reduce any mundane reasons why you might have a weak flame. We had a batch of candles that came in that were not, I felt that they were a little bit flawed. So we burnt a few of them, try to work with them, try to see, if the quality of the candle was going to impact the overall burn. And so there's the intention there for making sure that we get rid of mundane reasons when we're interpreting that. You guys are asking a couple of questions that will get answered a little bit later. So I'm going to get to those, a couple of those questions a little bit later. Okay, the dancing flame. It's hard sometimes to visualize this, so I did get some videos of some candles for you guys to kind of give you an example of what that is. So candle flame movement can also play a part in messaging or communicating back and forth with a candle. When you have a dancing flame, first and foremost, I would say you need to pay attention. It's an attention grabber to you. It usually means that there is high energy involved, either on your side or on the other side. You know, we use the term target, you know, if you're interacting with another person somehow, positively or negatively, doesn't matter. It could indicate that there's some complications. There's been something that's crept up and something that has stepped into your magical workings. Maybe it's you, maybe it's somebody else, you know, and so it can also be very indicative of success, like, you know, especially if it's dancing, but it's dancing in a progressive way. The flame is strong. It's not necessarily being threatened to go out or anything. This is a little bit different than flickering. I will talk about what a flickering flame is, but this is where it's not moving in a particular direction. It's kind of all over the place inside of your candle or around your candle. And it's a way of the candles communicating to you about how things are progressing. Okay, and then there is a jumping flame. So a jumping flame is very indicative of a couple of things. So it depends on the intention of your magic, you know, so whatever it is that you may be working on. So if, let's say you're working on love work, a jumping flame like this may indicate arguments between two people. It can be indicative of anger, hostility, conflict, lots of emotion. You know, it can also, if you're working on something that has an outcome that you're working on, then it could be fast success. It could be like, we're getting this going, we're moving this and we're popping this along. But typically that jumping flame, it's usually in a vertical motion up and down, is resistance. You know, so you may decide, well, what am I going to do? When you're working and interacting with these candles, you should always be asking yourself, what do I need to do? What do I need to pay attention to? What is my role here in this magic? Because it's not just the candle's job here. You know, the whole reason why we have this two-way communication is so that you are a part of this conversation, of this magical working. Okay, a flickering flame is different than a dancing flame. It kind of looks like a dancing flame, but it's a little bit more subtle. It's a little bit more, it's a little slower, you know, and so it's again, doesn't have a whole lot of, you know, overactive motion. It's a very subtle motion. It can mean that spirit is present. It kind of depends on what you lit the candle for. You know, so if you were calling divinity, if you're calling divine, universe, or spirit, a flickering flame would be indicative of, I'm here. What do you want? You know, let's have a conversation. I'm listening. It can also be perhaps a signal to say, look at me, you know, for divination, you know, to say, hey, look and pay attention. Let me show you something, you know. And so usually when I see a flickering flame, especially if I've been asking for some information, I will take time to meditate in front of it, to be able to reflect or think about what is happening. Yeah, if you're starting to lose audio, it could be that I need to replace the batteries on this. We've had 2 classes today. So please just let me know if audio is consistently going in and out for multiple people. Okay, so directional flames are also important too. So you may get a flame that is leaning one direction or another. First, let's talk about directional setting directions. Before you light your candle, you should set your direction, like which way, like if I'm looking at my candle, which direction, if it's forward facing to me, then that's generally your southern direction. And then on the back side of that candle is north. You know, so it does not have to be cardinal nautical directions. It does not have to be based on a compass direction of north, south, and east. You know, those are, if you choose it to be that way, you kind of make that agreement beforehand. Like I'm focusing in north and southwest and east, you know, so and it's cardinal directions. So when you set up a candle with the intention of, I'm going to read this, whether I'm reading the wax, the smoke, or the flame, and I'm looking for possible directional information, know which direction is which way before you even start. So typically, you know, as a rule of practice, if you don't want to necessarily have to try to figure out which way is which, then you create a front of the candle. So the way it's facing you is usually frontward facing. That is, it's going to be, so in front of the candle is south, behind the candle is north, and then you have your east and your west. If a flame is moving in a particular direction, there's very specific, you can tap into the elemental information that it's providing to you. And that information that it's providing has a lot to do with kind of the energy behind each one of those elementals. So if you're familiar with those, with the energy behind each elemental, it can help you to decipher maybe what is needing. The north is all about physical representation, you know, things that happen in the physical plane in order to manifest. And so if a candle is leaning, or the flame is leaning north, there's something that you need to physically do. So I'll give you an example of this. If you are asking for a raise or a promotion at work, and the candle starts to face north, or the flame starts to face north, there's a communication back to you that there's something that you physically need to do. It may be that you need to brush up on your resume. You may need to ask for, like, physically go in and ask for that raise or ask for that interview. There's something that you need to physically be a part of in order for it to manifest, you know, that it's not a simple ask of having that just fall in your lap. There's some participation here. Our eastern direction is all about, you know, communication and strategy. It's all about knowledge and wisdom and our mental. And so in this case, there's maybe a new ideas on the horizon, you know, or to tap into your insight or your knowledge here. What do you know? Or there may be a drop in of something that you might know. South is all about power, energy, passion, aggression, you know, and an urgency to it, you know. So there's the energy behind there is reading that fiery element of south, you know, that deals with passion and creativity as part of that message. And then west is all about our emotions, you know. So maybe there's an emotional element coming out of this, you know. Maybe there is a empathic message that's going to come to you, you know, something that you're going to sense in your emotional realm. Usually it's a good sign, you know, as far as outcome is concerned. Now, what if you have an unsuccessful flame? An unsuccessful flame can manifest in a couple of ways. I've had this happen many times. You know, you light a candle and then it goes out. And so I think somebody had asked the question. So when do you light a candle? Maybe it was week before it went out. So maybe it started off as good, it went to weak, and then it just puttered out. An unsuccessful candle could mean a couple of things. Now, as an eclectic witch, you know, I'm not gonna tell you necessarily like hard carved rules. I'm just not that person. I'm not that type of person. But you are going to create a language with your candle magic, and you're going to create some guidelines and some rules. There are some things that are generally out there as best practices, you know, in a way of getting started. But for you know, that's what I'm sharing with you, is those general outcomes. And so an unsuccessful flame could be a message of not now. Maybe spirit doesn't want you working on that right now, or maybe there's something else you should be focusing on. You know, it could be a very hard and definitive no. For me, as a rule of thumb, I will attempt to relight the candle 3 times. If it goes out again on the 3rd time, that's a hard no. And so it's, at least for me, you know, so you may be more inclined to take an unsuccessful flame or a burnout flame as a no on the first message. You know, but that again, like I said, you're going to be developing your own language, your own form of communication. It could be that there's something else that you should be focusing on. Maybe there's something better that you should be refocusing on. So whenever I have a candle that is unsuccessful, you know, I usually will go back and reflect on what was my intention. You know, maybe I need to do some work. You know, maybe maybe my request is unreasonable. Maybe there's something I need to take care of. The other part of it too is maybe the candle has been communicating with you the whole time, and you haven't been paying attention. And so it's a remind. It's like a hung up phone call. You basically got hung up on, and you may decide that you want to refocus and reattempt that candle. Again, it could be something completely mundane. So you want to rule out mundanes. I know there's been a lot of chatter in chat about wicks and all this other stuff like that. This is assuming that you've already handled all the mundane things. Like if you already figured out, like nobody else blew it out, you know, so nobody unintentionally turned off your candle or snuffed your candle. You want to disqualify all of those things first, and then you do these interpretations as magical communications. Okay. There are other flames that can happen. You know, so for example, there are things like split flames, dual flames, cracking and poppling flames. Candles, I call them chatty candles. I'm actually not going to touch on some of those things. There's a lot more out there as far as communication is concerned with candles. I didn't want this class to be like 50 slides long, you know, so there's a few other flame type behaviors. I don't know that they're as common, you know, so if you do get things like a split flame or a dual flame or a sparkling or popping flame, you can always message us, you know. We have a lot of people who will send us videos of their candles, you know, and we will give you some insight as a team what we think or see is happening with the candle. As far as emailing slides, we cannot email the slides. These are too big. The file is too big. You will have access to all of this information on our virtual grimoire. And so we will post a link again in the chat box about how you will be able to access the playback of this video and get the slides. And if I'm able to recreate the handouts, I will do that. It usually takes us about 24 to 48 hours to get that content back out there. But you will have access to that in the future. You just got to give us a little bit of time to get it up. Okay, let's talk about ceromancy. Ceromancy is interpretation of wax. This can be done in a couple of different ways. Ceromancy is not just the wax pour out. Like somebody had asked, you know, well, what happens when the candle curls? You know, that is a form of ceromancy. When you're looking for images or interpretations of the wax itself, you know, and so looking for shapes, looking for images. Ceromancy can be done a couple of different ways, not just the wax that it leaves behind in the form of candle melts, but you can do candle drippings on paper. You know, so taking a candle and dripping it onto paper and reading the images on the paper or a plate or something like that. Ceromancy is also done by dripping wax into a liquid, so usually water, in order to see what kind of images form from the wax as it cools down and it hits the water. It can also be poured onto, say, a map or a cipher. And when I say a map or a cipher, it's you could use perhaps a printed like pendulum map or a sigil, or like in this picture, it looks like it's almost like maybe a natal chart or something like that, some type of an astrological chart. And so you can use wax drippings in order to have a conversation using candle magic that way as well. Now, the nice thing about ceromancy using these types of techniques, it doesn't necessarily require you to have a candle that's burning. You can actually melt wax, you know, so using kind of like a wax melter and do pour outs, you know, so you don't necessarily have to have an open flame for ceromancy. Let's talk about a little bit of basics with ceromancy. This, first and foremost, this takes practice. This also takes a lot of patience with yourself and trusting your instincts. At the very basic level, you're looking for shapes. You're looking for images in the wax. And so there's an exhaustive amount of resources online and in different books about like, well, if you see a Scorpio, this is what that means. If you see a cross, this is what this means. And those are great tools to kind of get you started as you're looking at this. And so I think the best advice that I can give you, that if you wanted to start getting into wax reading or ceromancy, is practice, doing these types of activities to hone your communication skills with your candles. Trust your instincts too. You know what those symbols mean to you. And so you don't necessarily have to follow, you're building a communication with your candle magic. You don't necessarily have to follow what a book tells you that means. I think that the universe talks to us in the languages that we understand. So if you're burning a candle and you see images in there, you trust your instincts to know what that means. Looking at it from different angles, looking at it from different perspectives, squinting your eyes and trying to see images at this. If you don't have success in this, it's okay. You do not have to be a ceromancy expert in order to get benefit from candle magic. This is just an advanced skill set when you're looking at it. The images that you see in the wax can be very informative about outcomes. It can be informative about maybe burn patterns, or why there was a flame, why the flame behaved a certain way, during the burn, and so this is one of the reasons I love candle magic. Is it can be a very involved ritual. You've got time with the candle while it's burning, you've got time with the wax, you've got time with the smoke. So there's a lot of different ways that you can communicate and divine and to get more information about the magic that you're achieving. And so first and foremost, just get used to practicing and looking for images. Now, there are some very specific, wax patterns that you might see that have very specific messaging for you, that maybe you can't see the animals or the shapes or the signs in the wax. There are some things that you can do at a basic level to read it. Now, in an ideal world, a clean burn, what I would call a clean burn or a successful burn, usually doesn't have a lot of, I'm going to say, excess wax. There may always be some wax left over. So if you're like, oh my gosh, I only have like this little pile of wax, what am I supposed to read? Maybe you're not supposed to read anything into it. Sometimes there's going to be residual wax, but when I say excess wax, this is more than perhaps you expected from the same type of candle that you were burning over time. But generally speaking, if there's no excess wax, that's a good sign. It means that the spell was successful. There's no additional follow-up, no additional information. The spell is complete. You're done. And wait for the results or wait to hear back from us. But it's a good sign if there's no wax. Now, the type of wax that you have could also determine, what is result, or what the residual is, or how the smoke works. So just be familiar with that. If you're using beeswax or soy or paraffin or whatnot, they may have different. Particularly if you're repeating a spell, I do recommend that you use the same type of candle if you're repeating the same work, because I think that will give you kind of like a neutral base for that. Now, the direction of the wax flow follows kind of a similar pattern as the flame itself. So when you are looking at, and this is on waxes that are free form. So maybe it's a figure candle, a pillar candle, something that wasn't in a jar, so that it was allowed to free flow on the surface. So again, make sure that you've done your mundane work and that the surface was level and it didn't just roll off into a direction because it was sitting on a crooked table or something. But once you've disqualified any mundane interference with the wax outcome of it, then you can read the message in the wax. In the north, we mentioned it was all about material. So different objects or places, and that it may take some time. Our northern direction tends to have a longer time stamp to it. The east is all going to be about maybe additional communication that's going to be needed. With the duration of how far it goes, that usually might indicate how far in the future it might take for that outcome to manifest. So if it's a longer eastern tail of the wax, the longer period of time that may take versus a shorter period of time. but it's usually indicative of a new beginning, a new start, a new fresh idea, or a new direction that you're going. South, again, all about that heat and that passion and lust. And so the outcome may become quickly, but just like a fire, you have to feed a fire. You have to feed a fire something to burn, something to eat, something to consume, something to keep it going. And so it may be something that you need to continue to work on in order to sustain. So if that wax is moving towards you in a southern direction, just be mindful of like this is not something that you can ignore in terms of your role in maintaining the outcome. And then west is all about that spiritual awakening, that psychic awareness. Maybe it's a divine connection. It may be that spirit's on the way to help, or you've got guides on, I'm sending you your spirit, team to come and help. And so it may also be indicative of something in your past that you need to work with. There's a lot of like karmic messaging in Western direction burns on candles. It could be shadow work that's going to be needed, diving deeper into your emotions or into your past, or something that you need to resolve before that outcome manifests itself. If it's in all directions, usually that's that's a general message as far as there's a lot of work to be done. And so if I got a candle that burnt out, not in a way that was like imagery, like in a circle, but if I saw a cross burnout in all of the directions, that's a message to me that, hey girl, you've got a lot of work to do. There's a lot of stuff here that you need to do. There's some stuff that you need to manifest in the real world that you need to work on. There's some communication that needs to happen. You need to put some work into this, but we're going to bring some help your way. I would look in there to see, do I see images that give me clues about any of those factors? But it has happened. I've totally had candles that burned out on crosses, and it just, okay, message received. Pillars. Somebody mentioned something about tunneling. So you get a lot of tunneling in candles, especially like figure candles or skull candles. Tunneling can happen in jars. A lot of that sometimes has to do with how it was prepped or prepared, or the type of quality of the candle or whatnot. Tunneling does actually mean something too. And so if it creates pillars, whether those are pillars in the jar itself or in the candle, or you've got what I could call standing towers, figures or images, those pillars are usually indicative of like blockages. That could be a person that's in your way. Maybe it's a mental block, a state of mind, or a mindset that's in your way, resistance. Maybe there's people, so sometimes you can see figures in there, and to kind of get a determination of what other elements are involved in your magic. If the pillars are in a certain direction, I would pay attention to that. Is there a pillar in the west or in the south? Those tapping into those directional meanings can also give you some clues to not just the directional aspect of it, but is there a blockage in this direction as well? Is there a person maybe I need to seek out, or is there a person in my way in this area? But that's going to give you some indications. There's some great images here. Like I love the example of this one. I see very much like a ladder. If I was looking at this candle from like if I assume that on the north side of this candle, that's the far side of this is the north. And this was something that needed to be you need to overcome this, you need to climb this. There's going to be some work that you need to do in order to move this energy forward, because there's a ladder on the north side of this candle. I also see what kind of looks like people, so there's ways that you can look at these images to get some more information. Also, don't forget about negative space. As somebody who has an artistic mind, sometimes the images or the messages are in the negative space as well, not just in the wax space, but that is the in-betweens, so look there also for images. So don't overlook those negative spaces. Okay. Let's move on to smoke. So smoke is capnomancy, which is interpreting kind of the messages around smoke and the direction that it flows and where it's going, and how it's behaving. Now, this is not just like, obviously, when the candle goes out, there's going to be a smoke trail, obviously. if you blow it out or snuff it out, there's going to be a smoke trail as well. You can read then, but also if the candle is producing smoke or soot during the burn, that is information for you as well. Oop. Okay. Let me see here. I didn't update the picture here. I'm sorry. There was a better picture here. Let's say there's no smoke. If there's no smoke while it's burning, that's usually a good sign. And so again, strong flame, no wax, no smoke, good burn. You know, these are ideal. That means there's been no interference. It usually means that this is a good outcome. You know, there may be no additional information for you at this time. And so there's, like I said, there's tends to be kind of a default setting for interpreting your candle. Now, candle smoke can also have a direction. Again, eliminate the mundane. Is there a fan on? Is somebody walking by? Did that move the smoke? But if you've eliminated all of those, then assume that directional energy is a message for you. So if a candle is burning and the smoke starts to move in any one of those directions, you want to tap back into those same lessons that are learned. Be practical, take some time. You know, North is all about long durations, physical work that you need to do. You might need to clear negativity. So if you start seeing the smoke kind of moving in a northerly direction, you might want to go through and purify yourself, cleanse yourself, clear the space, you know, purify the area where it's around. It may mean that there's some clearing that needs to happen. Easternly is going to be all about that mind, that intellect, using logic for the best outcome, but it usually is a good sign. It's usually a positive outcome. South is engaging your creativity to reach your goal. It may also mean that you're attracting. So if you were doing, say, a prosperity candle, a love candle, a road opener candle, you know, something that usually is designed to bring something to you or to attract something to you. If that smoke starts to waft in that southern direction, you are attracting that. Now, super important, because sometimes we attract things that we don't want either. So depending upon the intention of the candle, I would pay attention, you know, if you're attracting something when you are trying to banish it. No smoke is usually a good sign. And so if it starts to move to the west, usually that is, I'm a water sign, I'm a water element. And that is my cue from spirit that says, you need to go meditate. You need to go reflect and do some spiritual work and address something from your past before this continues to progress in a positive way. Again, this is an ongoing conversation that you're having with the candle and the work that you're doing. So you may find that it changes over time, you know, so over the duration of the burn. And that's, I think, going to help to validate, you know, that you're interpreting those messages correctly and that you're doing the work that's needed. Let's talk about sooting. When I get done with this slide, I'm going to show you a couple of examples of real world sooting. So sooting is another really good indicator. Now, again, we've mentioned this before, sooting totally could be the result of an overdressed candle that was caught basically on fire and everything in the candle just, you know, blackened out the inside of the candle. You know, so first and foremost, rule out the fact that you may have overdressed the candle or something that was in there that was causing it to soot. You know, so the best way of doing that is one, practicing on that one, and less is more. You know, you do not have to drown your candle in oils or herbs, you know, or paraphernalia in order to get the magic that you want to have happen. There's a couple of different types of sooting patterns that could show up. So if you start to see that you've got black sooting on your candle, especially in jar candles, then that usually means that there's some type of negativity, perhaps a blockage. Maybe the blockage is you, maybe it's somebody else, maybe it's a mindset. Now, if it is in the top half of the candle and then it rectifies itself or it clears itself, then I would read that and interpret that as the blockage has been removed. You know, so you may only get a little bit of sooting at the top and then the rest of it is a clean burn. I would not interpret that as an unsuccessful completion. I would interpret that as you removed that blockage. There was a blockage and it's been removed. And I would see that as a successful candle. Now, what if it's only at the bottom? Again, first and foremost, did you have a whole bunch of crud in your candle and it just started burning and then it sooted? I like to be around my candles when it's near completion, so, to see kind of how it's going to end. If I start to notice that things that I put in the candle are starting to catch fire and they're starting to burn and blacken, I may choose to then snuff and finish that candle at that point, because at that point the work has already been done, and now I'm just creating mundane, mess in my candle. But if you start to notice as you're starting to get to the bottom and it's not quite done yet, and then you start getting sooting, at the bottom of the candle, then it may be that it was successful, it was productive up until this point, and you've now suddenly hit a blockage, like what it got blocked at the end, especially if you're doing something that's reversing or bounce back or banishing or whatnot, that may not have been as complete as you wanted it to be. So it could be that negativity is the response, and it's being sent your way, or somebody is trying to reverse or undo what you had done. So black is not always bad, but if you start to see candles where it's mostly black, like I said, I'm going to show you some examples where if it's mostly black, that I would recommend you redo it, or you redo the work and you understand that there are some blockages there. Now white, I can't seem to review the, I'll read to you what the last comment on the bottom there is. So white is spirit presence. So this can sometimes be positive. It can also sometimes be negative. Again, it depends on what you're doing. But generally speaking, if you get white sooting in your candle, it means that there's communication from spirit, or there's spirit involvement. It could be a purification and a cleansing in order to purify your space, and if it goes all the way down the candle, then I would recommend that additional purification and cleansing needs to be done. However, if it's at the bottom of the candle only, that means that spirit was sent to aid you, to assist in a way. Now, I have found that if I am doing work to return to sender, banish, get rid of, anything that is going to be push back against somebody else's negativity, and I get a lot of like spirit sitting in there. April mentioned it in the comments, that is exactly how I interpret it. I interpret it as somebody else has sent spirit, or their spirits, or something baneful to work against the work. It's again, you're learning the language of candle magic, and so there could be times, like if it depends on what my intention of my candle was. If I was burning, say, a white ancestor candle, and I got a lot of white sitting in there, I wouldn't necessarily take that as a threat. I would actually take that as maybe something that's more positive, because it was the intention behind it was positive, and that was what I wanted, as I wanted to work with spirit. I wanted to work with ancestors, and confirmation that they were present during that time. It may also mean that I'm not done. I'm not done with that work, and I may need to go back, do another candle, and continue that work, until it burns clean, depending upon what I was working on. Now, I personally have had candles where I've had both. So you got black and white sitting in the candle. Sometimes it shows up more kind of like gray, like it starts off as black and then it kind of turns into gray, or like if you look inside the candle, it's black on the outside, but it's like really gray on the inside. That means that you've had both. You've had blockages and you've had spirit. Now, the order of it can be very important. So if you've got black on top of white, it means that your spirits help to clear that blockage. So yay, spirits to the rescue. Now, if you have white and then you see black, usually that means spirit was sent against the work that you were trying to achieve, and so I would consider that as unsuccessful completion of what you wanted to have the outcome. And so just looking at soot is an important one. Ideally, you don't want soot, and so you it depends on like what you were intentionally asking. Like if you were intentionally asking to maybe reveal, like there's times when I might do like what I would call a demasking or a deglamour for somebody. And I would expect blockages. People don't want to be unmasked. People do not want you to discover their truths, and so I would be shocked if I was doing something like that and it didn't soot a little bit, and so there's times when you should you should know kind of what am I expecting to get here. You know, it doesn't necessarily mean that it was unsuccessful. It just sometimes means you need to do it again, or there's more work that needs to be, that needs to happen here. Okay, I'm going to switch my camera real quick and I'm going to show you a couple of examples of sitting patterns that I have here with candles that we've got, that we've done in the store, maybe a couple of tools here. So I'm going to make a real quick pause here, come back to this. Okay, there we go. Can you guys see the screen well enough? I know that sometimes it can be small on whatever surface that you're looking at. But a couple of tools here real quick that I pulled out. When we do the references online, I'll be sure to provide links and everything. This is a carving tool, a carving set that I have that I use to do sigils and vivets on my candles. So I think it's actually designed to make fancier candles. I like it because sometimes I'm looking for very specific shapes or points or whatnot. And so this is, you can get this on Amazon. It's pretty cheap as a tool for carving. You can also just use, be careful with knives, but you can use something to carve it. Maybe you could use a needle or a nail or a pin or a pencil or something like that to carve into your candles. I just found that I eventually went and just bought a candle carving or a wood carving kit because I was tired of getting ink on my candles. These are knitting needles. I recommend these for jar candles that you may be doing and you want to get herbs or oils down into the candle. You can use these to basically create holes into the candle in order to put oils and herbs or something in their little tiny crystals if you wanted to embed that into the candle so that as you're burning it, it's in the whole candle as you're working with it. These are great tools. These are better than chopsticks because sometimes chopsticks break off inside of your candle and leave wood bits in there. And so again, we'll send links for all of this as basic tools that you might want to have if you're working with candle magic. Okay, so I wanted to show you an example of, sorry, I almost walked away with my microphone, of two candles that were burned for the same intention, but different outcomes. And so this was my first burn on this candle. It was a protection and a reversing candle. As you can see, it is mostly black. That is a lot of blackage. That's a lot of negativity pushing against it. There is a lot of activity on this candle. I don't know if you can quite see in here. I'm gonna try to see if I can get this. Do you guys see these like rings down here? Like the layers of waves of pushback that we were receiving. This was a very active candle. It's a little bit gray on the inside, so you can tell there's a little bit of spirit presence in this as well, with it not being completely black. But this is a candle that I keep as a reference because of the work that we were trying to do and push back on somebody's negativity. There was a lot of anger, frustration, pushing against this candle that we just didn't want to be on the receiving end. And so this was one that we ended up doing again because the end, I mean, you could say it kind of cleared up at the end, but just to make sure, I reran the same candle with the same intention and got a cleaner burn. So I have a little bit of resistance at the top and then the rest of it cleaned out burn, okay? So when you're kind of reading the intentions, you know, I keep a lot of these around as teaching tools when we're doing candle magic so that people can see what type of candle was it? Well, it's a 7-day candle and it was to push back against negativity. And it was a very specific target, you know, and so this one, when we set it up, there was, you know, a very specific person, a very specific incident, you know, and so we were looking for very specific feedback about getting rid of this person's negativity. And so this would be an example of where they were dressed the same, they were in the same space, they were done at the same time. I usually tend to do my candles in sets because I anticipate stuff like this. And so they were under the same conditions, same type of candle and everything like that, and we get different results, okay? This is an example of one where we did a sigil for Mercury retrograde. So we basically dressed a candle at the beginning of Mercury retrograde, reburned the candle a couple of different times. There's a lot of wax remaining behind in the candle. It's not on any one particular, there was a little bit of directional aspect of it, but generally speaking, it's kind of all around inside of here. We know that sometimes we struggle with some communication during Mercury retrograde. And so there's a lot of information here for us in terms of cleaning up our communication. It wasn't necessarily negative or bad. It was just Spirit's way of saying, take a little bit more time when you're communicating. But generally speaking, I would consider this a successful burn or successful read on the candle. Okay. This was an example of a failed candle, and it failed for a couple of reasons. This candle, first and foremost, when it came into the shop, we noticed that there was some deficiencies or some defectiveness in the candle. There was some bubbling on the candle. We wanted to see how it would burn when there was already a successful burn of a candle dressed the same way, just a different type. And so we got a lot of sooting. A lot of this I would probably chalk up to the candle itself. However, we got a lot of activity off of the flame. And so there was a lot of that was going on with this candle as well. I say it's unsuccessful because you see how much is still left in the bottom here. This was a very weak flame the whole time. And so we allowed it to burn as much as possible, and it finally quit on us down here. So this is one that I interpreted as we have to redo this. It was an incomplete spell or a failed energy working. And so we wanted to redo the magic in this one. A second example of what I would consider a fail, but also there's a message here on the redo of the candle. So this one, I wouldn't necessarily say this was a failure. We did clear out some blockages towards the end. I wasn't happy with kind of the energy that I felt afterwards, so I wanted to do it again. So we had a repeat of it, but we have a message here on the side of the candle where this was on the north side, where the flame actually started smoking and sooting on a very specific side of the candle. And so we didn't get anything else on the rest of the candle, but we did get some sooting on the side here. And all of this whiteness in here is actually white sooting as well. If I go in and I touch it, it actually removes it on the inside. And so there's a lot of spirit here, but Spirit definitely was saying to us, hey, now you need to go do the work. So I've got your back. I'm here for you. I'm going to work with you. But there's something that you need to do. And usually that comes to me in a very clairsentient way of dropping in messages to me, or they love to talk to me over radio. And so I get those messages as follow-ups usually after candle magic. Okay, so I just wanted to show you a couple of examples of sooting behavior that can happen real time with candles in different same situations and same building of those. Okay, let me reshare my screen here. Maybe. Okay, couple of candle myths debunked. I'm sure I'm probably going to say something that's going to probably piss somebody off, but that's okay. Okay, so we get a couple of questions. If you do have questions, start putting them in the comments, because I think right after this, I'm going to show you if you've got time to stick around. We're at about an hour and a half. So if you can't stick around, that's fine, but I'm going to show you a candle layout, and I'll do it live for you guys so you can kind of see it done. I already did a little bit of pre-work on it, but like I said, if you can't stick around, it'll be in the playback. Couple of candle magic myths debunked. I hear a lot, or I see a lot, never blow out your candle because you're blowing away the magic. If that is the agreement that you have with your candle magic, then that's fine. Then continue to do that. You can snuff a candle by starving it of oxygen, because oxygen is needed in order to keep the flame going. You can, so snuffing is a best practice. But usually the justification that I get from people about why not to blow on a candle is because it somehow offends fire by presenting another element. And I'm going to have to challenge that a little bit. There are elemental relationships that we have that are complementary, and there are some that are contradictory. So when you introduce the element of earth or the element of water to fire, it absolutely cancels and negates out the element of fire. They are not complementary, so you often cannot. What I usually will say is, can you re-achieve that element after it's been exposed to another one? Okay. And so the idea that obviously if you put water over a flame or on a candle, you're probably never going to light that candle again. It's just not going to relight. If you put sand or earth on top of a flame, it's not going to relight as well. I do think that if we're going to use the argument that the fire is offended because you basically dismissed it, or you introduced another element into its space, then I think we need to consider the fact that fire and air coexist. They complement each other. And you know this if you've ever seen a flame that's gotten out of control, like if you've ever blown on a fire in order to get it to start or to charge it up. It's the level of what you're inputting on it. Fire needs air in order to continue to burn. And so I've personally, this is my personal thought about this, using air to extinguish fire is less offensive to fire than using water or sand on top of it. Again, you can snuff it and you can deny it air in order to extinguish it. That is just your personal preference. But the idea that you're going to blow away the magic, if you don't actually believe that to be true, because for me, my breath is magic. My voice is magic. I can breathe into existence what I want. I don't necessarily subscribe to that. So take it for what it is. If you don't believe that, take what you need, leave what you don't need. Does the color of the candle matter? No. I mentioned this in the basic class, but it does help. So anything that you can do to enhance your intention is fine, but let's say you don't have that color. Remember that candles were originally made out of materials that didn't involve color or maybe had pigmentation. That was usually something that only, elite people could have access to. They were made out of fat, they were made out of lard, they were made out of, wax that was uncolored, so having a nice color to complement it is more about enhancing your intention than about whether or not you've done the magic right or not. So can you use a green candle for love? Absolutely. Why not? Emeralds are associated with love. Why would you not want to grow love? You can change that intention to make it work for you. Let's see. Okay, so candles that are meant to be burned for days, can you put it out when you have to leave it unattended, or does it have to remain burning? That is a personal choice. If you're going to leave a candle burning, like you want to burn it consistently until everything's kind of done, just put it in a safe space. If you think that there's going to be a problem, I've used my fireplace as a safe place for my candles, put it in a pot, just in case something happens while you're gone. And that this way you want to make sure that you're practicing candle safety. Now, as a rule of thumb, we tell you never leave a candle unattended. That is the safety protocol. But have I walked away from a candle and left it burning? Yes, take precautions. And okay, does somebody have a question that's unmuted? Okay. Do I have to light it on certain days or times? No. It helps. Hey, Tara, can you help me with the muting? Somebody's got a hot mic, so if you're not going to ask a question, please mute yourself since we're recording all of this. It doesn't necessarily have to be on a certain date or time. You know, there's times where it's just in time. It's just in time for what you're going to do. It helps though. All of those are techniques that help to enhance it. Does the type of wax matter? No, not necessarily. There's been people who said, well, just use natural wax, use beeswax, you know, or don't use this, or don't use a synthetic. I don't necessarily subscribe to that. I think it's important that you understand the how wax can affect burn patterns and smoke patterns and wax melts. So just be mindful of that. Does the size matter? No. It could be really the size is about the duration, like how long are you going to burn a candle, you know, and what you're burning it for. Only burn one candle at a time. No, not necessarily. I'm going to show you a layout where I have several candles going. Now, I do recommend that you burn separate candles for separate intentions. You know, so you might have an ancestor candle, and you might have an elemental candle, and you might have a, yes, thank you. You might have multiple candles or intentions that you're going. If you've ever been in the store, there's always multiple candles going on. One of them is maybe healing, one is protection, one is prosperity, one is for opener. So we've got different candles that are going for different intentions. Usually if you make it too complex, then you can maybe confuse and misdirect your intention by trying to add too much on top of things, you know, so try to complement them, you know, so, but in this case, you don't have to burn one candle at a time. Like you saw those grids or the candle layouts. That's a great way of combining multiple candles together for one purpose or one intention. Can I relight a candle that has gone out? Yes, I do believe that you can relight a candle that's going out. However, I will repeat back to one of the previous slides where I said, if it keeps going out, take that as a clue or take that as a message. You may want to reconsider what you're trying to do, what you're asking for, how it was, what your intentions were. Usually that is a message about if a candle keeps going out on you. Okay. All right. So in this case, I'm going to switch over the camera, get the space that's get it set up. If you guys have questions, go ahead and put them in the chat while I'm getting everything set up and switched over. If you can't stick with us, that's fine. You're more than welcome to leave. Again, all of this will be available on our Clastra. It's hws.clastra.org. It's our virtual grimoire. So where we have a lot of our past classes, some of them are free, some of them have a small fee to help us maintain the platform. You're welcome to go back there and get the Candle Magic Basics class. It usually takes us about 24 hours to 48 hours to get all of this online. And so please be patient with us as we work with technology and whatnot. But I'm going to set up this road opener prosperity candle. So for those of you who can stick around, please stick around. Yes, we're on Facebook. I'm probably going to post this to YouTube as well eventually. So we do a little bit of video editing and stuff like that. You can find us on Facebook and on YouTube as Hearth Wisdom Store. And you can get access to all of this information. So I'm really glad that you guys were able, for anybody who's got to leave, Merry part me, Merry meet again. I'm so glad that you guys joined us. And for those who are sticking around and you've got questions, feel free to go ahead and unmute yourself and ask the questions while I'm getting all of this set up.
Myra, I was wondering about incense smoke and reading that like candles.
Can I have a cheeseburger?
Somebody who's ordering food, can you please mute yourself?
Do you have like $4 for $1?
Oh, goodness. Okay, so the person who asked about incense smoke, yeah, I would follow the same suit with perhaps incense smoke. Like if you're sitting down and burning incense smoke, there's a whole augmentation of candle magic that could be talked about that doesn't necessarily involve candles. It's more about fire magic, you know, and so if you're sitting down and you're meditating with smoke and you're looking at directionals, I love smoke for meditations and for viewing messages and whatnot. I would follow the same rules when it comes to like the directions, you know, as far as the elemental that it's tapping into, the message that it's tapping into, whether or not it is, you know, emotional based, you know, or not. So. Okay, bear with me here. Let me stop sharing this. And let me switch over cameras. I didn't do this accidentally on the basic class. I didn't realize how small the camera was when I was setting up or showing different types of candles here. So I wanted to make sure that I made a point that you guys could see what I'm working with. So like I said, we have a project that we're working on with the store. We applied for a grant, and you know, with a small business like us, they want you to reveal everything, show you everything that you are and what you're trying to do. And I find that sometimes because we're in the metaphysical space, we get disqualified from grants or you know, financial assistance. We are working on some expansion projects that I would really like that grant to go towards. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a layout that combines the energies of road opener type energy and request and petition, along with money and prosperity, because that's what we're asking for. So I'm using a figure candle. I'm using this as kind of representation of the store. I'm not necessarily saying that our store is feminine in energy, but I'm making petitions to Goddess, and we have a lot of women that work here, and so tapping into that fierce, badass woman energy of making shit happen is what I'm kind of going for with my figure candle here. On the back of it, I engraved, you can't really see, I tried looking at it earlier, I engraved my intention. So I put the initials of our store. It is a $10,000 grant that we are applying for and hope to get some portion of. I don't expect the whole amount, but I want the whole amount. So that's what I'm asking for. So I'm being very specific about what I want and what I want to get for it. And so I carved that into this figure because I want that to be the focus of that. And I'm setting her in the center of my layout. I am also going to be using, I'm looking around and I didn't bring a lighter over here. I'm also going to be using 3 chime candles. I'm using these colors very specifically. Orange is typical for road opener. Green is typical for money. Yellow is usually for success. If I'm using this as my my directionals on the candle, I have this facing you guys. And so in this case, this would be my southern direction and this would be my northern direction. Since I want to open up the roads, I want that to physically in the world. So I'm going to be using my road opener candle in the northern position. We've got our southern energy that's down here. And then we've got east and then west. East is all about that intellectual knowing and knowledge. So I'm going to set that generally, my success candle in there. And then I want my money candle on my positive outcome, because it's a dream and it's a vision that we have for a future that money is going to be used for. So that is my general layout. I can dress each one of the candles with an oil that will help if I want to use herbs to wrap around them. I do have a couple of herbs that I have here because I'm going to connect them with herbs. So I've got bay leaves, I have patchouli, and then I have alfalfa. So I use my alfalfa for success. I'm using my bay leaves for insight and strength. And then I'm using my patchouli for the money aspect. So connecting, thank you, Bethany. So I'm using these 3 herbs to connect my intentions. I've got prosperity oil and I have road opener oil. So using the road opener oil, whenever you're dressing a candle, when you're trying to attract something to you, you want to draw that in the direction towards you. So when you're dressing a candle, whether you're pulling it towards you, you can pull oil to dress it towards you, or you can roll it towards you. If you're pushing it away, obviously roll it away from you. But if you can see here, I'm not lathering this up. I'm keeping the wick. I'm staying away from the wick on this. And then I'm going to set my candle. This is more just for safety because I don't want this tilting over. So I'm going to set it by melting the wax on the bottom to give it something sticky to stick to. Okay. Now I'm going to use my elf, and I'm going to work my way around the candle in your direction. The way it's looking at you, this is going clockwise around. The way I'm looking at it, it's reverse. But if you're drawing something to you, you're going in a clockwise direction. If you're getting rid of something, you're going in a counterclockwise direction. And so I'm going to use my alfalfa to draw a line or draw a grid from my road opener to my Eastern success. Now with my success candle on here, I still have a little bit of road opener on my hand. I'm using that to also dress that towards me because I want to attract success towards me. And while I'm doing all of this, I'm thinking of exactly what I want. I want the board of directors who grants that request or that grant to move in our favor. You know, that I want them to see us for the benefit that we have of what we give back to the community. You know, I want them to be open to the idea that we are worthy of and should get that grant. And so I'm focusing on all of those intentions as I'm setting up my layout. For that, I want to use my bay leaves because of the success that bay leaves bring with intention. Bay leaves are great herbs that in its full sense that you could use in order to write a petition. So maybe you decided to use the whole leaves here and write your intention about what you want to achieve. And I want to make sure that that line is unbroken between them. So I see there's a couple of little light areas there. I'm trying to keep track of you guys' questions and comments in the chat there. Is it wrong to put oil intention oil on the candle? Yeah, somebody already answered that. Yeah, if you put oil on the wick, you're going to potentially get a lot of sooting. It may interfere with what you're trying to do as far as the results or the outcome that's going to happen. Now I've got my prosperity oil on my final candle because my outcome is that grant money. And drawing that to us so that we can achieve our goals. We've got some expansion projects that we're going to help out the community, creating sacred space. You know, I've got in my vision for this is all about additional room for things like hand fasting ceremonies, additional rooms for, you know, the work that we're trying to do in order to create more content and be more available to our community as a whole, to give other creators space that they can thrive in. And then my last herb that I'm connecting this with is patchouli, because we know that patchouli, well, if you didn't know, patchouli is connected with money. And so it is it's a money herb, and I'm connecting that all the way back, creating a full circle. To my road opener. If you're kind of like science-minded, it's like closing the circuit. You know, I'm closing the connection all around my center candle piece here. And so this would be my layout for burning this. I'm not going to light this just yet because I want to take a time when where I'm focused on this and not focused on you guys to sit with my candles, to talk with my candles. Like I said, I believe that my word is magic. My word is power and authority. And so I will talk to this. I will tell it, you know, what I'm hoping for, that I want to get out of this. I will communicate our communication guidelines, you know, as far as like outcome is concerned, like what, you know, if you do this and you show me this, and that's how that's going to be connected. Now, when I light it, I'm going to light it in the same order. Okay, so I'm lighting it with my intention that all of this needs to happen before I light my center. So I'm lighting my road opener, open the doorways, open the paths, open the channels that I need in order to be successful. Create an environment that is going to be successful for us, you know, so I'll make alignment for the right people, the right words that need to be said in order to bring out a successful outcome, and then bring that money as asked for as quickly as possible to our final project. And then I will light our center candle. Now, when this burns down, I will gladly share with you guys what it looks like. I'll post it on Facebook because you guys will know what it is and whatnot. But when all of this burns down, so one of the things I'm going to be looking for is patterns in the flame. I'm going to be looking for smoke. Is anything smoking? Is there a particular candle that's smoking? Because that would be very indicative of something, right? You know, so let's say that all of the other candles are burning fine, but my road opener is smoking. You know, that would be to me like, hey, there's some blockages here. And guess what? Road opener is in the north. So there's some physical things I need to do. Maybe I forgot to turn in something. Maybe I need to follow up with an email or something like that. You know, these would be signals that I'm looking for. Can you write in intentions, put it under the candle? Absolutely. Now, if you're going to put it up underneath the candle, be careful of when that finally burns down and the flame makes contact with that paper potentially. So, because it could light your entire project on fire. I would usually slide it underneath the plate first. So, you know, putting something underneath the surface in order to get the message clear, because it becomes a complete setup. It becomes a complete arrangement. Sometimes you can maybe hollow out the inside of a candle and put what I call a flash paper. It's like that rice paper, fast burning paper that's not going to be super hazardous inside the candle. If you wanted to do that, put a little petition paper in there as well. Maybe you burn the petition paper in the fire. So there's a lot of ways that you can use petition paper as a way of augmenting out your spell. Okay. What I'll be looking for after this is all burned is I'll be working with the wax in a ceremancy way to be able to see, what did that say? How did that work? You know, what is my message to me? But this is an example of how using a layout, using multiple candles, you know, using multiple techniques of engraving and carving something, dressing it with herbs, dressing it with oils and intention there. And so hopefully that will give you some inspiration about different things to do with candles. Okay. All right, let me switch videos. And what questions do you guys have of me? I know it was a lot of content. It was basically 2 hours. So I appreciate you guys sticking around. So it was a very full class. And like I said, basically went off without a hitch. I do appreciate that everyone was participating. All right, you guys, any questions? Okay, let me share the last slide here. It's got the website for our virtual grimoire. Again, like I said, it is online. It's on Clastra. It's hws.clastra.org. We do have a link on it on our Facebook page. You're more than welcome to follow that link. Like I said, we've got tarot classes on there. We've got the candle magic classes. We're putting Wanderer's Way, which is a class that I'm teaching tomorrow about spiritual path work and stuff like that. And so there's a lot of our past classes are on there. Some of them are free. Some of them have a small cost in order to help pay for the platform, because nothing's cheap ever. You know, so feel free to go there. Give me about 24 to 48 hours, because we've had 2 classes today that I still need to render and get online. So give me some tech time to get to that. And then, you know, if you've got any questions, you can always email us. The slides will be there. If I have a handout, I will put a handout there as well in order to share that information with you guys. Okay, I'm trying to get the chat up to see if there's any other questions. I don't want to drop the meeting without answering any questions. Do you do private counseling for candle work? Yeah, we actually, so a lot of times people will send us a message on Facebook. We've got several candle readers or several candle magic practitioners. You can always send us a message on social media privately to the store to get some feedback or insight if you need some help with that. we've had people bring their wax melts into the store for interpretation. You know, so we're here for you. We want to try to give you as much information as possible, and to help you guys out, you know, whatever's going to increase your information and your knowledge. Okay. Reading fire flames the same as, well, any fire flame is pyromancy, you know, so you can do pyromancy even in a fireplace, you know, so candle magic is just a more contained form of like fire magic, you know, it's just a very specific. So if you know, want to do some interpretation, I love doing this with some of my witchy friends. We'll go and do something, and then we'll sit around the fire and we'll just talk about what we see in the flame, you know, and so that's a form of pyromancy, of reading the flame. And so it's not necessarily like candle magic, but it's the same form of divination. Cube-shaped candles, that's a great question. So I would use a cube-shaped candle to burn for something that you want to, like a gift, or maybe something that you want to overcome, like a blockage, you know, so it's whatever that shape is going to best connect with you, as far as what kind of shape of candle you want to use. But let's say you got a candle and you're like, I'd love to use this candle, I have no idea what I'm going to use it for. A cube shaped candle would be a very interesting, like blockbuster type candle. I think that would be an amazing candle to use for blockbuster. Awesome. Okay, you guys. Like I said, I've taken up enough of your time. It's been 2 hours. Thank you for joining us. I look forward to seeing you again. If you're going to join us for Wanderer's Way tomorrow, I'll see you bright and early tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. I look forward to talking to you guys then, and I appreciate you being with us. Merry meet, merry part, and merry meet again, everyone. Bye.